Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the final episode of the definitive Persona Iceberg, Tiers 8 and 9 of the definitive Persona Iceberg. As always, there's a spoiler alert in this video, so if you haven't played the games, and definitely if you haven't gone back and watched my earlier episodes on this series, I highly recommend you go do that before watching this video. Otherwise, there may be some points in the video which may not make a whole lot of sense. But with that being said, sit back, relax, and please enjoy the video. Persona Detective Naoto. Did you know about this obscure Persona 4 spin-off manga titled Persona X Detective Naoto? Written by Natsuki Mamiya and illustrated by Shigenori Dojima and Shiki Satoshi. Set 1 year after the end of Persona 4, Naruto is asked to investigate the mysterious disappearances of two Yagakuro students by an old detective friend, Tooko Aoi. There, she is partnered with Sosei Kurogami, a mechanical detective and a polar opposite to her in terms of personality and methodology. In their first encounter, she awakens to a new persona, Amatsu Mikaboshi, which enables her to amplify Sosei's persona ability, Tsukiyomi. Together with Sosei, she discovers the Midnight Site, an anonymous site where judgment is passed on others by 5 judges named after figures in Japanese mythology: Izumi, Sarata Hiko, Omekane, Taiji Kurano, and Fututama. However, it quickly becomes apparent that this case and another under Toko's supervision are related when one of the judges turns up dead with ballistics pointing to a missing police officer's gun. Naoto and the others must discover the identity of the other judges to protect them and find out the culprit who seeks to kill them. If that sounds interesting, I'll leave a link to the chapters on Manga Dex below, since it has yet to have an official English translation. There's a theory that states Ren Amamiya, the MC in Persona 5, is originally from the setting of Persona 4, the small town of Inaba. One piece of evidence that supports this theory is the fact that the dog barking sound effect heard in the Shido flashback scenes of Persona 5 is very similar to the dog barking sound effects heard in Persona 4 during the Devil's Social Link cutscenes in the hospital.
Nice work.
Although most likely this is just due to Atlas reusing assets, as they often do. But this theory isn't just for the protagonist of Persona 5. There are some who believe each protagonist is originally from the location of the past game. That would mean P3's MC is from Samara City, Yu is from Tatsumi Port Island, and Joker is from Inaba. This would also make sense thematically if each MC is supposed to be a reflection of the player. It would make sense that each MC would be from the location of the last game, since the player also technically lived in the previous location before moving on to the next game in the series. Persona 4R. Many people, myself included, really want Atlas to remaster Persona 4. After all, if they can do it for Persona 3, they can definitely do it for Persona 4. Not to mention the fact that Persona 4 was released just 2 years after Persona 3, meaning Persona 4 could definitely benefit from some graphical upgrades. In fact, people want Persona 4 remastered so much that some extremely talented fans have started making trailers in an attempt to persuade Atlas to develop a Persona 4 remake and demonstrate the desire fans have for this game. Hell, someone even made an updated version of the UI that looks just as good as the one in Persona 3 Reloaded. And although I would love a remake of Persona 4, I would rather Atlas release Persona 6 first. But what do you guys think? Would you rather have Persona 6 or Persona 4 Replay? Persona 3 Mobile. There exists an extremely obscure Persona 3 mobile game called Persona 3M, released exclusively for Japan on November 26, 2007. It takes place during the Yakushima trip in Persona 3. In the game, when members of SEES go to sleep, they awaken in the Nightmare Hour, which is similar to the Dark Hour from the main game. During this time, they must explore a Tartarus-like dungeon called Oneiros, the entrance of which is a hollow opening inside a large tree. During their exploration of Oneiros, the group periodically encounters Arche-persona bosses at 20-floor intervals. The first two bosses depend on who is in the protagonist's party upon reaching that floor. These first two bosses' stats are fixed and do not scale. Regardless, Fuka and the protagonist's Arche-personas are always encountered on the 60th and 80th floors respectively. The Arche-personas symbolize a different side to the users they often belong to and are often difficult for them to accept. In that respect, they are similar to the shadows of characters in Persona 4. To reflect this, they have swapped color palettes. For example, Arche Orpheus is red, and their strengths and weaks are often the opposite of the original. There is also a social link mechanic in this game, in which you are able to hang out with different members of C's in exchange for special items. There's a lot more to this game that intrigues me, so I'll definitely have to get my hands on it and play it somehow, and might even make another full-length video on it. So if that's something you'd like to see, let me know in the comments down below. Sakurai played Persona 5 early. Did Sakurai play Persona 5 early? I couldn't find any concrete evidence for Sakurai being able to play Persona 5 early, as Persona 5 was released in Japan on September 15th, 2016, and the earliest I could find Sakurai mention Persona 5 is this interview published in Famitsu Volume 515 on October 6th, 2016, in which Sakurai applauds Persona 5 on its design, but mentioned he's barely had any time to play it since he's too busy working. When Joker was revealed to be a playable character in Smash Ultimate, Sakurai visited Atlus headquarters for another interview, in which he talks about his own personal history with the Persona series. For example, did you know Sakurai has actually been a long-time fan of the Persona series, going all the way back to Persona 1? Or how about the fact that in his first playthrough, he was able to max out every social link except for one character, and that being Yusuke, because he thought the game would last for a few months longer. But the highlight of this interview for me definitely has to be the super adorable interactions between Sakurai and Morgana. Devil Survivor 2 Fate System. I've already talked about this much earlier in the Iceberg, which makes me wonder why it's so low. But if you didn't know, Devil Survivor 2 is a Shin Megami Tensei game released for the Nintendo DS and 3DS that has a very similar system to the social link mechanic of Persona. Makoto alive. Pretty sure this is a joke entry because we all know Makoto dies at the end of Persona 3. Some people don't consider him 100% dead though, as he still acts as the seal keeping Nyx locked away. I'll talk more about this in my other videos though. Metis is Aiga's shadow. After Makoto's death, Aiga's emotional pain was so intense she couldn't stand it. She wished to become a mere machine again and lose the human side of her that caused her pain. Separated from Aiga's, that human side took the form of Metis, which is more emotional and childish in nature. At the end of the answer, Aiga's accepts Metis as a part of her again, causing them to fuse. So while not confirmed, it's pretty easy to see the similarities between Metis and the shadow bosses in Persona 4. Nyx returns. I have a hard time seeing this ever happen in any way that isn't non-canon unless Makoto is somehow revived and isn't Dorkun anymore. Maybe all the protagonists could team up or something, like maybe if they did it in Q3. But other than that, I highly doubt this would ever happen again. Dojima is the killer. One of my favorite things about Persona 4 is how at the end of the game, in the secret ending, it was revealed that Dojima actually has been the killer this whole time. But who would have seen that coming? No, but for real, there are rumors online that say Dojima was originally planned to be the killer, but these are just rumors, and as far as I could find, there's no evidence to this being the case. One rumor that turned out to be true, however, was the fact that Itachi was originally not supposed to be the true killer, but just simply a red herring meant to throw the players off. Apparently, his original design was meant to be a lot more suspicious to aid in playing the role of the red herring.
I'll be crying if I look like that too, bro. That's fucked up what they be doing to y'all. I ain't even gonna hold you, bro. I be saying that's fucked up, like, bro, you probably had the full washing set. Your shit be fire probably if they ain't cut your shit. Fuck it though, bro. It's your life.
But it was changed to being more innocent looking after this idea was scrapped. Nyarly predicted Adam Kadmon. Nyarly is a YouTuber who makes SMT content who I had no idea existed, but I'm glad I found out about him because he's definitely a channel I'm going to be using as interpretation for this one. 5 years ago, he uploaded a video talking about what demons he'd like to see return to SMT, and one of the demons he listed was Adam Kadmon, who hadn't returned since SMT 9. That wasn't until the release of Persona 5 Royal, where Adam Kadmon is the final form of Maruki's persona and the final boss of the game. So yeah, in some ways I guess Nyarly did kind of predict Kadmon coming back to SMT. Persona 1 Iku no Tohen. Megami Iban Roku Persona Iku no Tohen, or Persona 1 Iku no Tohen, is another obscure mobile game, this time based on Persona 1. And that's all I had to say about this one, except that this one is actually on Steam, meaning I'll definitely be playing it probably sometime this summer. And that's it for the 8th tier. Now moving on to the final tier. This is the one we've all been waiting for. Sei's apartment. Okay, so I can't speak Japanese, nor can I find an English translation, so I'm just going to have to take Metaverse's Mysteries word for this one. There's this online game show that ran from 2014 to 2016 called Persona Stalker Club before it was renamed to Persona Stalker Club 5 until the show ended in 2017. The show is hosted by the voice actress for Hifumi, Tomomi Isomura, and Kajira Mafia, who worked on DLC for Persona 2. On episode 5 of Persona Stalker Club 5, it's revealed by director Katsura Hashino and character designer Shigenori that in one build of the game, Joker was planned to live with Sai Nijima in her apartment instead of living in LeBlanc. I'm unsure if this was to be for the entire game or only for a specific section, and I found another video showing the inside of what would have been Sei's apartment. But in this version of the game, it seems like the developers used the model of Catherine McBride from Catherine, another game by Atlus, as a placeholder for Sei. Stupid game. The only thing I could find for this one is this one Reddit thread, and oh, that's porn, isn't it? Attendants were human. I think this might be another gag / throwaway entry, since, while not being 100% confirmed to my knowledge, most people accept the fact that attendants of the Velvet Room aren't human, but are creations of Igor to aid in service to the MC. But where things get weird is when you get to Persona 1 and 2. In Persona 2, there are 3 attendants in the Velvet Room: Belladonna, Nameless, and Demon Painter. Only Belladonna and Nameless aren't actually created by Igor, but by Philemon, and like Igor, are a part of the Velvet Room themselves. All that leaves is Demon Painter, which, surprisingly, is actually just a normal guy, who one day wandered into the Velvet Room and never left. So, he is canonically the only Velvet Room attendant who is human. Forbidden McDonalds. I don't know if this is what the entry is referring to, and most likely it isn't, seeing as how these entries are quite a few years old at this point, but there is this channel on YouTube called RevanXL that's uploaded a couple AI videos featuring the protagonist of Persona going to McDonald's, and honestly it's really funny, so go check them out. Akane becomes Vtuber. Akane is a character from Persona 5 Strikers that is a massive fan of the Phantom Thieves, even going as far as to have her own streaming channel. But to call her a VTuber is a bit of a stretch, unless you count talking in a deep voice and holding up a toy in front of the camera. Somehow though, she has amassed 50k subscribers. And really? 50k people subscribed for this? Whatever. I'm not jealous or anything, but I think I might be switching my content up from now on. Adachi breaks the fourth wall. This isn't the only fourth wall break in Persona, as there are tons of examples of characters throughout the series making references to the fact that they're in a game. That's not to say that any of these characters are aware in the game or anything, just a little joke here and there that are thrown in by Atlus to make the player laugh, and Adachi is no different. There's this point in Persona 4 where he talks about having to shove Mitsuo into the TV or the game would be over. But honestly, this isn't really a fourth wall break, as Adachi and the other characters refer to the murder mystery as a kind of game throughout Persona 4. But as I said before, there are tons of fourth wall breaks in Persona. Like how in Persona 5 Strikers, Ryuji talks about how it's like the crew are in an RPG or something. Or in Persona 4, when Yamada makes sure that you know exactly how Atlas is spelled and assures you that there can be no other spelling for the word. Jose replaces Igor. So there's this theory that Jose from Persona 5 will replace Igor in the next installment of the series. Since the voice actor for Igor, Isamu Tanoka, died in 2010, it's likely they will go with a new character instead of having to reuse old lines like they've done until now, and a lot of people seem to think Jose could be the one to replace him. Jose himself is a very mysterious character within Persona 5, so here's what we know about him. We know that he is trying to understand humanity under the promise of a, quote, certain person. Once 123 stamps have been collected in mementos, Jose will challenge you to a friendly fight to learn more about humanity. Upon defeating Jose, An asks about the certain person Jose keeps talking about, and Jose tells the crew that there are more people observing humankind than you realize. Could this certain person be Philemon? Not to mention, his design is eerily similar to that of a doll, and we know Igor was a doll that came to life and now serves Philemon. And lastly, we know that in order to learn about humans, Jose collects flowers and mementos and turns them into juice, which he drinks. Kind of like a butterfly, the form Philemon takes after Persona 2. Honestly, out of all the crackpot Persona 6 theories, this might be the one I actually think is possible. But what do you think? Do you think Jose could come back in Persona 6 to replace Igor? Haru was the traitor. There's a theory that states at some point in development, Haru was originally supposed to be a traitor instead of Akechi, but is there any validity to this story? Well, there are a few points, but I'll save my opinion for the end and let you come to your own conclusion. The first point of the theory makes notes to Haru's seemingly rushed introduction to the party in contrast to the rest of the crew. Some people think that of all the characters, her character arc was the weakest, which may point to the fact that she was changed at some point. The second point is her personality. While most people play it off as a gag, we know Haru has a bit of a sadistic side to her, as she comments that she loves it when shadows beg for their life. And the third point would be the symbolism of their personas. Each Phantom Thief's persona is based on a fictional or historical figure known for being an anti-hero, except for Haru's persona, Milady, based on Milady de Winter, a fictional character in Alexandre Dumas. The Three Musketeers is a villain who used manipulation for her own personal gain. It would have made perfect sense for Atlas to make Akechi the red herring, while sneaking clues here and there as to the true identity of the traitor. Personally, when I first heard this theory, I kinda wrote it off. But now after researching a bit, I think there could be some validity to it. But what do you guys think? Do you think Haru would have been a good antagonist? Metaverse still exists. We know that because of Persona 5 Strikers, the Metaverse still exists and will always exist. That's because the Metaverse is simply the physical manifestation of the collective unconscious. So, the only way to destroy the Metaverse would be to destroy the collective unconscious, which would be very bad. Nanako's shadow. I think this one may have started as a gag since Nanako doesn't have a shadow form officially in the Persona 4 game, but in the manga, it seems that Nanako might have kind of a shadow or alternate version of herself. I don't know, it's not really explained. This entry might be talking about Persona Record Magi Arena, which is another fanfiction, where Nanako actually does confront her shadow and gains a persona. I don't know if it's intended, but I'm finding so many fanfictions as we reach the end of the Iceberg, I may just have to make a video on a few of them. P6 influenced by... I'm not going to say it. I'm going to refrain from using its actual name because I've heard some horror stories of doing so on YouTube, so I'll be calling it Apathy Syndrome instead. Anyways, as I'm sure you all know, Apathy Syndrome spread across the world in 2020 and affected the development of many games due to employees having to work virtually from home instead of meeting in the office. But I don't think that's what this entry is talking about. There's a theory that Apathy Syndrome didn't just affect the release window for Persona 6, but even the story and themes. But how could we possibly know this? Well, if you remember, the 2011 Tohoku earthquake changed Persona 5 drastically early in development. The story was going to be wildly different and feature many different locations around the world. But after the disaster, Hoshino decided to have the game take place in Japan. So it's very possible something on the scale of apathy syndrome may have had the same effect on Persona 6's development. Other than that, there isn't really much evidence to this theory. But I don't hate the idea. But what do you guys think the story of Persona 6 will be? My first video on this channel was about just that. So if that interests you, I highly recommend checking it out. Inaba Simulated Reality. I honestly have no idea what this could be referencing to, but I found this really cool video about Inaba and the political themes in Persona 4. I think this entry is this Iceberg's version of every copy of blank is personalized, which is a meme present within many video game Icebergs. Hidden party members. I think this refers to the fact that in Persona 1, depending on what route you choose in the game, you lose or gain access to certain party members, which is a really cool mechanic, but understandable why Atlus never decided to go in this direction since. Also, in order to find this stuff, I had to go back to forums that were 15 years old, which is insane. Tatsumi Poor Island accident was deliberate. So we all know Yukari's father, Ichiro Takeba, was the one who caused the Tatsumi Poor Island accident in Persona 3 that caused the creation of the Dark Hour and Tartarus. Obviously, at the end of the game, we find out he did this to prevent the fall by splitting Death into 12 pieces. But there is one thing he says in the true version of the recording that is incorrect. He leaves behind a piece of advice to, quote, leave the shadows be in order to prevent Death from reforming. However, if Cease had chosen not to fight against these shadows, they would have continued to spread apathy syndrome, provoking the fall little by little, which means Cease had no choice but to reform Death and fight it in order to prevent the fall. So why did Ichiro give this false piece of advice? I don't know if this entry is insinuating Ichiro did it on purpose, but we have to remember that apathy syndrome wasn't around during this period, so he wasn't able to take that into consideration. I think this entry might also just be a joke, like some sort of in-universe conspiracy theory. Nameless and Belladonna. Nameless and Belladonna are very mysterious characters within the Persona franchise, as they are among the first inhabitants of the Velvet Room appearing in both Persona 1 and 2. Not much is known about these characters. At first glance, it may seem like they don't follow the tradition of the other attendants of the Velvet Room by being based on Frankenstein characters, but this may not be the case. Belladonna seems to be based after Frankenstein's bride, at least in her design, and Nameless, well, that's a little more confusing. He might be based on DeLacy, the blind man in the novel, whom Frankenstein befriends, or he might be based on Frankenstein's monster himself, who doesn't have a name, and the two are a little similar in design in my opinion. The Universe Arcana grants omnipotence. The Universe Arcana is only featured once in the series, and that's in Persona 3. It's also the only Arcana not from the Rider-Waite Tarot card deck. Instead, it's from the Thoth deck, number 21, and replaces the World Arcana. Even Igor remarks that he could never dream of seeing it. The MC then, with the Universe Arcana, conceal Nyx, who herself is a nigh omnipotent entity. That's all to say, the Universe Arcana is a very mysterious thing that isn't completely unexplained in the games and only appears once, so it's unlikely that it'll ever return. Most people associate it with the power of friendship gimmick in anime. Tokyo Mirage Sessions P5. I've already talked about Tokyo Mirage Sessions and its similarities to the Persona series, so if that's not what this entry is talking about, I'm sorry. Izanami created Nanako. Did you know that upon digging into the deepest depths of the code for the Japanese beta version of Persona 4, specific voice lines can be found between Nanako and Izanami, and they seem to indicate Persona 4 was originally going to be a much darker game? Nah, I'm just kidding. And lastly, the moment we've all been waiting for, Circumcision Theory. I've been looking forward to this entry ever since I started this Iceberg. So what could this entry possibly be referring to? At first, I thought it was just another gag entry like some of the other entries, but upon further research, I realized that this entry was completely serious. But first, I need to take a step back. When I first had the idea to do this series, the first thing I did was Google and type Persona Iceberg. The first thing I saw were 3 different Persona Icebergs on Reddit, so I took all 3 and mashed them into one and called it a day. But when researching this entry, I found a 4th iceberg that contains more entries I have yet to cover, so I'll definitely be doing that in a later video. But it was under this 4th iceberg that also happens to contain mentions of the circumcision theory where my research began. Someone commented regarding the circumcision theory entry, saying, "To make a long story short, there was a mod from the Silent Hill wiki who was a conspiracy theorist that thought Silent Hill condemned circumcision. He also says the same theory along with a few other series that can be applied to Persona." Now I was intrigued. The gist of the Silent Hill theory is that Walter Sullivan became a serial killer because he was circumcised. Yes, really. I'm not going to break it down as it's way too much, and this is a Persona iceberg, not the Silent Hill iceberg. There's a Wang video that covers it if you're interested. But the question still remains. What the hell does this have to do with Persona? Well, at one point, the moderator also relates the circumcision theory to other games, and one of the games in that list is the Persona series, especially 3, 4, and 5. Damn, even when it comes to the circumcision theory, 1 and 2 still don't exist. Apparently, he also made edits on the Persona wiki, but unfortunately I could not find it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the circumcision theory. Somehow, someway, Persona is really just about warning against the satanic origins of circumcision. Who would have known? Anyways, that's it for the definitive Persona iceberg. I thought it was a fitting end to the series. As I said before, there are still some entries on the other iceberg I'd like to cover, but I probably won't be doing it in the same way I did this series. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did make it all the way to the end, that means you must have liked what you were watching, so please consider hitting subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that like button as it helps my video in the algorithm. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.